Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Rebolledo. I'm the CEO of Tandem Finance. Welcome to this webinar called The Benefits of Being an FRM, an Outlook of 2023. It's my enormous pleasure to introduce Lisa Ponti. Lisa is a Vice President Institutional Outreach at the GARP, at the Global Association of Risk Professionals. Lisa has an impressive curriculum at GARP, including academic and regulatory outreach. Previously, she was also a professor at the University of New York, and she holds a PhD in business education at NYU and also an MBA at NYU. I suggest that you could write your questions in our chats via Zoom, and also you could have the opportunity to open your microphone in order to ask any questions after Lisa's presentation. Okay, welcome, Lisa, and please, it's your audience.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, everyone, for joining me this evening. I know it's not always easy at the end of a long day, you know, to do these kinds of things. I'm just going to share my screen because I did put together a little presentation. I didn't know the name of that your title had, Paul, so I'm talking about investing in your knowledge and talking about educational opportunities. So it's all the same, basically. I have been told by many former students that I speak quickly. So if someone needs me to repeat myself or stop, please, I will not be offended. And if you, as Paul said, want to put a question in the chat box, I will be happy to go through all of them at the end of the presentation if you have any. For those of you who may not be aware of who we are, the Global Association of Risk Professionals is at its core a professional membership association. We are seeking to advance the best practices in risk management through our education, our research endeavors, and things of that nature. Actually, in 2023, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the FRM exam. So we've been doing this for a little while now. The FRM is globally recognized. It has been benchmarked as being pedagogically equivalent to a master's degree. I wouldn't argue that you don't need a master's degree, but it's a fairly rigorous program. Our curriculum is overseen by top-level financial risk practitioners who help provide market insight. The FRM is designed to be very applied in nature. It is designed to be applicable to the job either that you have now or the one you're trying for. It's not theoretical. It's not like many educational pursuits. You know, pursuing a degree, not everything you study when you're in college or in graduate school will you use in your position. So we have worked very hard to make sure that we have, current market intel on what is needed, what members, need to know. Oh, shoot, there's no title on that slide. Sorry. The financial risk manager, they changed my template for me last week. I apologize. As I mentioned, the FRM, it's a graduate level professional certification. We will have been doing this for 25 years. The curriculum is guided by senior practitioners as well as academics. At last check, we have about 77,000 FRMs certified around the globe. So we are definitely not of the same order of magnitude that our brethren at the CFA are, but they've been doing it a little longer than we have. But we have been seeing a lot of really solid growth. We also have partnerships with about 125 master's degrees at universities around the world who are also looking to help support best practices in risk management. just to give you an idea of what the 2023 curriculum looks like, we've made some updates. It's not terribly different from 2022. So if maybe you started looking into it, it shouldn't be that different. But essentially, part one of the FRM is very foundational in nature, okay? What we're trying to do here is provide you with the toolkit that you will need to work in risk management. The exam itself is 100 multiple choice questions. You get 4 hours to take it. One thing I will tell you is when I first started at GARP, I worked on the FRM exam development team. So I can promise you that we time ourselves taking these tests to make sure that it's fair, that you have, you know, an appropriate amount of time to get the question completed. I mean, we go through a ton of work to make sure that it's the very best exam we can get. I know sometimes, you know, people globally, the exam is only given in English, and that can be, you know, frustrating for some people. But I will also tell you that we are very careful to avoid any slang, so that if it's a term that's only used by bond traders in London, you won't see it on the FRM. We try to be very cognizant of that. But so back to the part one curriculum, we have the breakdown here of the percentage of questions. So there's foundations of risk management. There's a section on quantitative analysis, which for 2023 has 2 new readings related to AI and machine learning in quantitative analysis, because that has come up in recent surveys of practitioners as being something, you know, moving forward that people are going to need to know about. And it had been a current issues reading, which I can talk a little bit about in a minute, but now that those topics have been moved into the permanent curriculum in an effort to make sure that everybody has, you know, what's really current and what they're going to need to be successful. There's a section on financial markets and products, and a section on valuation and risk models. And that rounds out part one. Part two is a little different. It's much more applied in nature. And here we're taking a deeper dive into the different types of risk and how to measure them and how to mitigate them. It's only 80 questions. You still get 4 hours. But it's also a little less quantitative in nature. And some people like that, but a lot of people don't. I know that many people want to get their calculator out and go bang, 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 bang. Here's my answer. Part two is a little more integrative, a little more applied, as I said. And so we take a really deep dive look at market risk, at credit risk. I'm going to talk a little bit about the operational risk and resiliency section in a moment, but then we have liquidity and treasury risk measurement and management. And that section is still relatively new. We introduced that section in 2020. Again, as a result of our, you know, every 3 years, we survey people who work in the industry, and not just FRMs, not just our membership, but people broadly that work in the industry, to make sure that, you know, we know where the curriculum should be, that we're providing you with the appropriate skills. We have a small section on risk management in the investment management sphere. And then we always maintain that current issues in financial markets section, which again will be current readings that are about topics that are current. Decentralized finance, Bitcoin. There are readings about machine learning and AI also still in current issues, but not about the use of them, but more about the implications of them. So going back to the operational risk and resiliency, this section was rewritten for 2023 and contains case studies of companies and how they've managed various different types of operational risks. So that's a little new this year, and we're kind of excited about that as well. As I said, you do get the 4 hours to take this exam. And just talking a little bit about the logistics. When we were a paper and pencil exam, you could take both exams in one day, which I think is crazy, but okay. People do it all the time and they're successful. But now that it's a computer-based test, part one has a 2-week window in mid-May and in mid-November, and we have one date in August. For part two, there's a 1-week window that's a little bit after part one, but again, in May, in November, and then in the afternoon in August. So that for a highly motivated candidate, you could still get both exams done within one set of exam windows if you wanted to, or alternately, we added the August date in part to help people move through a little faster. So if you sit for part one in May and you pass, then you will have time to register for part two in August, things of that nature, to try and help people so that they don't get hung up waiting for the next exam. But all told, you could still get it all done within a year. Just thinking about what you can do with the FRM. I know when I speak to university students and I say things about risk management, they don't really understand what that means necessarily. It doesn't resonate with them. But to be honest, the skills that you learn through pursuing the FRM can be applied in so many different ways. We have FRMs that obviously work at banks, whether they're managing the bank's market risk or their credit risk. They could be in charge of stress testing, model validation, things of that nature. There are people who work in audit, in treasury, managing a company's own financial and funding requirements, things of that nature. We have people that work in the regulatory arena or in research and strategy. So there's just a lot of different areas where you can apply this knowledge. You're not pursuing a specific one-track job. If I had been able to, and I apologize for not thinking of this, but if I had arranged to have a couple of FRMs join me on this call, they all would have had different jobs. I very rarely convene a panel of FRMs where any of them do anything the same. It's really, sometimes they work for the same company, but they don't do the same thing. So there's really a lot of different paths you can follow in pursuing the FRM. The G in GARP does in fact stand for global, and so we have FRMs at many of the top financial institutions around the world. Consulting firms are also very big employers of FRMs as well. So again, a lot of different areas and a lot of different ways you can go within an organization. I hosted a luncheon in Charlotte for Bank of America FRMs. There were 20 people there. Most of them didn't even know each other. They were all in different departments doing many, many different things. Now, one other thing, since I have a captive audience, I thought I would bring up, and I will answer any and all questions about the FRM as well as I promised, because I said I did work on the exam development team. I did want to just talk a little bit about our new certificate program in sustainability and climate risk. We launched this in January of 2020 to try and help risk management professionals better understand the impact of climate risk as a driver of financial risk. We have over 8,000 people who are candidates for the certificate, and almost 7,000 of them have sat for an exam. I did actually sit for this exam in April, so I can actually talk about it, and I did pass. So we have close to 4,000 SCR holders. They're scattered geographically, but we are gaining a lot of ground in the Americas, and the average pass rate is in the mid-50s. Whereas for the FRM Part 1, I would say that the average historical pass rate for Part 1 is probably in the high 40s, and then for Part 2, it's probably in the mid to high 50s. I think it hit 60% once. It was very unusual. We were very excited for those candidates. If you're interested in green finance and climate risk, as I said, as a driver of financial risk, we will walk you through 8 different areas of climate risk. You don't need to have a science background. We will talk about the foundations of climate change, what it means. We have a section on sustainability. what does climate change risk actually mean? We examine the policy, environment, culture, governance, all of those factors that will influence how a company can respond to climate change. We have a section going through green and sustainable financial markets and the instruments that are evolving in order to meet these needs, as well as sections on measuring climate risk, creating climate models, scenario analysis, and new for 2023 is a chapter on net zero. In addition to the book, which was written for GARP by subject matter experts, we have some other online readings that we provide on our website for free for people to for supplemental reading. And the one thing I really liked about the program was that it looks at climate change a little bit differently. Whenever you hear about climate change, usually what people are talking about is our impact on the environment, and it's bad. Everything's bad. Cows are bad, planes are bad, cars are bad, everything is bad, 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 bad. What we say, okay, that's the basis. This is where we are. But what we want to look at is knowing that, what is the impact on me as an organization, and how am I going to measure this risk? How do I evaluate it? And how do I react? So for example, if you are a commercial real estate developer in Southern Florida, you would probably readily guess that a potential impact of climate change is, well, the latest hurricane whooshing through your building and flooding the first 7 stories of your commercial real estate. But it goes broader than that. And that's why I like the second picture on this slide. This is a Tesla charging station that's been flooded by a local storm. So again, it's kind of giving some thought to, okay, if the environment is getting warmer, what does that really mean from a practical standpoint? And how do I mitigate those risks or adapt to them? Because some of them maybe not, you may not be able to mitigate them. And physical risks are, again, usually pretty easily seen. You know, real estate, having facilities destroyed. Superstorm Sandy here in the Northeast, where I live, was just crazy. But there's also the transition risk. And if you work in financial services, your financial institution may not have a great deal of direct emissions or direct risk, but then you have to look at your portfolio. What are my clients doing? Where are my clients operating? And what are the risks to them? So it's a really interesting program. It is a certificate, not a certification. So it is only one exam, and it is 80 questions over 3 hours. And there is no work requirement to complete the certificate. Whereas for the FRM, once you pass the part 1 and part 2 exam, you then need to demonstrate 2 years of relevant work experience, and then your certification is considered complete. Just to give you some ideas of, again, where the SCR holders are coming from. They're coming from everywhere around the globe, and they work in a million different areas. NGOs, international development organizations are pursuers of the SCR, as well as, you know, typical people who are already knowledgeable about GARP, people that work in financial services, asset management, investment banking, things of that nature. So it can be, you know, again, skills that can be used in a great many places, because every business is going to be impacted by climate change. Just to give you an idea of the entities that are employing our SCR holders. We have service providers and the banks and overall, just to give you a general idea. The last thing I really wanted to talk a little bit about before I take any questions on the curriculum or the exams, I could give you some study hints if you want, is by joining a professional association of any sort really gives you a network of colleagues to help you as you develop your career. We have 30 chapters globally. Peru is actually a home of one of the GARP chapters. It's a recent addition, but again, it's indicative of increased interest in risk management as a profession and pursuing advanced education in that field. So we have, over 270,000 members worldwide. I always like to tell, when I talk to students, I always say, that's 270,000 people you can ask for a job. And the 77,000 FRMs and 3,700 SCRs. We do have chapters, as I said, located elsewhere. And honestly, if you can have an upside of a global pandemic, it's that our chapter meetings are accessible globally. During 2020, 2021, everything was remote, everything was on Zoom. So if you in Lima were interested in a topic that was being discussed in Calgary or in Hong Kong, as long as the time zone worked for you, you were able to attend. Our chapter events are free, and anybody is welcome to participate. So most of our events are still either hybrid or remote. I believe we may have had a chapter meeting last week in Peru. I believe so. If Lita was on the call, I would have her confirm it, because I know she was a part of it, but I believe it was last week. And it can really be a great way to, as I said, to make connections to help you advance your career. We have a ton of resources on our website. If you want to learn more about careers in risk management, please feel free to visit our career blog. We have dedicated pages to the FRM, as well as the SCR. And if you're just interested in sustainability and climate generally, we have some really great resources to learn more about the topics. We have a podcast series that I listen to every week, or every couple of weeks when they issue new ones, on my lunch hour, because the speakers are amazing, the topics are interesting. It's not always the most uplifting of subject matter, I will absolutely give you that, but I do find it to be truly interesting. So I am a little ahead of schedule according to my recollection of our agenda, but that just leaves more time for me to answer questions. So let me stop sharing my screen. And I am happy to answer any and all questions.
Excellent, Lisa. Thank you very much for a illustrative presentation. It's been very useful. And now, as you said, it's time for a Q&A session. So please, the audience, take advantage of this opportunity to ask any questions about the exam, GARP, or the new certification. You're more than welcome to ask your questions. So please feel free to open your microphones or write via our chat. That would be excellent. I will start with one question,
Sure.
Lisa. If I want to build, if I'm a really undergrad student and I want to build a career in risk management, why should I pursue the FRM exam? What are the main benefits of being an FRM in the current environment of risk management?
Well, to be really honest, Paul, and I say this as someone who taught for a decade, undergraduates and some graduate courses, but the job market has only gotten harder for graduating students. I do not envy them at all, that it's become so highly competitive. And most degree programs are excellent. I mean, but they tend to be broader in focus, and that will absolutely help you get your start. To take a step back even further, the FRM is a professional designation. It was not designed with students in mind. From our exam dates, November and May. May is always around graduation. November, everybody's on Thanksgiving holiday. It's just, which is part of the reason why I really like the August date. Like if you're in school, that would be a really convenient date. So the FRM really is, it's very focused, and it is very directly applicable to working in risk management. And so what we often find with candidates is they do have bachelor's degrees or master's degrees in finance or economics, some sort of business endeavor. And perhaps they've started out in their career and now find themselves in a risk-related role, and say, "Oh, wait, I think I could use a little building up of my skills." Because to be fair, it's not necessarily the career someone thinks of. Like I know when I taught, and if I taught in a finance class, students were all like, "Well, I'm going to work on a trading desk. I want to be an investment banker." And I'm like, "Well, those are all, those are great ideas, and that's perfectly valid. I mean, if you want to be a portfolio manager, I'm going to be really honest and say, you might also want to look into the CFA to be very fair." We find a lot of people have both the CFA and the FRM, and to be honest, what they do is they usually start, if they're going to start with one or the other, they will usually start with the CFA because of its breadth. And then when they find their niche in their company or in financial services in general, then they may come back to specialize in risk management. And Jorge, I do see your hand, and I promise I will get to you, but I want to answer Eduardo's question and Ivanka's question, because they're both sort of related to the same thing. And I also see the question up above, and it's talking about prep time. Okay. I will tell you that we survey our candidates after every exam cycle. And on average, candidates report having studied ballpark about 250 hours. The range tends to be 150 to 350. So, I kind of split the difference. What I don't know, looking at that number, is, are these people who are graduate students? Because I think graduate students probably need less time because they're very much used to digesting a lot of material all at once. Whereas working professionals, they may not remember how to study exactly. Like it might, it might take them a little while to get back into that groove. But what you're going to have in your favor, presumably, is work experience. And so the concepts that you're reading about won't be just theoretical. They'll be things that you use every day in your position. So that would be my answer, hopefully, to Eduardo and Ivanka. And also, to be honest, getting back on track are reasons why companies like Tandem Finance exist, to help you just stay focused. It's a self-study endeavor, and that's fine if you're a self-study kind of a person. And some people are, and other people like the benefit of having a schedule, having to be a little accountable, having an instructor standing in the front of the room at the ready, or at the front of the camera at the ready, to answer questions and help walk you through things. So again, the prep, Eduardo, going back, not necessarily knowing about risk management, that's okay. I will tell you that we have engineers sit for the FRM. And so I would think it's not necessarily risk management that you would want to have, a strong background in, but a facility with numbers, a quantitative background will definitely help you go a long way. And now I'm going to hit Gilbert's question because it's in front of me. The Caribbean, we did have some testing sites. I believe they were in Jamaica, to be honest. It's a rather small market, but we are looking to grow wherever we can. So Hopefully I can take this back again. If Lita were here, this would have been part of her geographic remit. I might have been able to find out more specifics about what she might be doing in the region. But we do keep an eye on all emerging markets to see, to be honest, where the level of financial markets is, the sophistication level. As financial markets become more sophisticated, then they require the higher level of skills, and then the FRM will tend to be more in demand. Jorge, you've been so patient with your hand raised. What was your question?
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for the explanation. Well, first of all, I want to ask you, in order to get more clarification about getting an FRM instead of SOA, because I want to be like well, I want to follow more like an actuary route in order to develop my career, but I don't know if the FRM is like well, it could be useful, or maybe I go directly to the SOA exams. What is your opinion about this?
I will be very honest with you, Jorge. We do not touch the actuarial sciences at all in the FRM. That is an industry that is very well regulated and very, very well covered. I am aware of the series of exams that one has to go through to progress. I have an aunt who worked in reinsurance. She was always sitting for some actuarial exam. We do not cover those topics or anything along those lines. So if that is something that is of interest to you, then I would say your instinct is right to look at the SOA. We actually have done some joint events and cooperated with the SOA because they really, we don't really compete exactly. We're more complementary. We are probably, if I was thinking about specificity, I would say the CFA is really broad, then the FRM is a little more specific, and then the SOA and the actuarial sciences are just, that much more specific. But that would be really a career choice for you. I'm trying to find this. I had at my let me see if I can find this, but we do not cover those. So if you know that is something that you want to do, I would say the SOA is going to be the way you want to go. We are not that specific. And I found what I was looking for. I should have made a slide about this, and I do apologize. But we have surveyed, for anyone that's interested in the field more broadly, we have done surveys of hiring managers and people that work in HR in the field of financial risk management. And future hiring trends, over 50% of the people surveyed said that they're going to be increasing their hiring in the coming year. And another 40% said that they expect their staffing to, at the very least, remain the same. So it's still a growing field. Risk management. It's kind of, we've been doing this for 25 years. When I went to school in the dark ages, you didn't have all these specialized master's degrees and all this stuff. I have an MBA with a finance major. That's what was available. And if I didn't want to do that, I would have had to sit for my CFA. So everybody's gotten a little bit more specialized, but we do see that hiring managers are they're struggling to find good candidates with really solid quantitative skills that can jump right in. So going back to your question, Paul, someone that's come out of school, to make themselves stand out even further, whether you go pursue the SOA exams or the CFA charter or the FRM, anything like that, it's just you're signaling to your employer, how serious you are about your career and how you are committed to learning and developing with that career.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Lisa. In fact, Tandem Finance has signed an agreement with Universidad del Pacífico, which is one of the most prestigious universities here in Peru, to teach in the final courses, the courses about the FRM and also the CFA exams for undergrads. I think here one of the main trends is concentrated on the beginning of the FRM career or of the CFA career. The average age is decreasing, and so we are seeing more often younger people interested on the credentials.
Yeah, no, actually, that's actually a trend that's been a long time coming. I know when I started teaching graduate students, they just kept getting younger every year. And so I think that there's a lot of that, like students are thinking a little earlier. And we have talked internally at GARP about seeing what we might develop. Our academic partnership program is currently with master's degrees. There's information on our website about it, but we have talked internally about seeing how can we work with universities' undergraduate programs and help those students kind of figure it out and present themselves in the very best light they can when they're looking for a job.
Yes. Actually, I had another question about how's the process of updating the curriculum in the FRM curriculum. I wanted to ask you because some of our students are interested on the process of if you hear some ideas or some opinions of the job market in order to update the curriculum. Professionals in the risk management area, and also my second question is, what are the main topics right now? I know now there's an uprising trend about ESG investing, ESG risk management.
Well, the fastest way that our curriculum is updated every year is through the current issues in financial markets readings. It's a small section of part 2, but those readings are updated every single year. And the FRM committee and the FRM exam development team and those who work in our CPD area, the continuing professional development area, they are always scouring for new topics, quality papers, things of that nature. And so those are updated every year. And sometimes the topic does move into the main curriculum, much like the machine learning AI readings have been incorporated into the permanent curriculum in the quantitative analysis section of part 1. Other readings don't remain, they don't hold their relevance more than when it occurred. So for example, when I first started working on the FRM, I was in charge of the current issues section, and one of the readings was about the London whale trader, the JP Morgan, I forget his name. But that's not something that's going to end up in our, permanent curriculum. It was a incident of a risk management failure. The point of the reading was to discuss what went wrong, things of that nature, and then, we all move on. But we do have, and I'm looking right now for this year in the current issues readings, I think we have, where'd it go? Where'd my file go? Uh-oh. All right, now it won't load up. I believe we do have a small reading on ESG and sustainability risk and climate risk in the current issues section. Broader changes to the curriculum occur as a result of our global practice analysis survey, and we do that every 3 years. So, I mean, a lot of the sections in part one don't change vastly from one year to the next. VAR is still VAR, and a mortgage bond is still, the basics always stay the same, but what they'll do is just see if something needs to be updated or modified, things of that nature. With the global practice analysis, then we say, okay, so where do we need to go forward? And that's when the liquidity and treasury risk section was brought into play. And it was decided that the machine learning should be moved from the current issues into a permanent side of the curriculum. So while we don't want to redo it every year, like, first of all, you wouldn't want to overhaul it in its entirety every year, because then it kind of says, well, what you had the first time wasn't necessarily lasting, I guess, if that makes any sense. Plus, I think all my EPPs would kill me if I kept changing the curriculum that much every year. Plus, it also provides a certain amount of continuity for our candidates.
Perfect.
But we do, as I said, every year we look at those current issues readings. I'm trying to find them for you to get the topics, but I can't seem to get the file open. I apologize. I see another question regarding the exam itself. The scholarships are part and parcel of our academic partnership program. We do not have a broad-based scholarship program at this time. Those scholarships, the recipients are nominated by their academic partner program. So if they are enrolled in one of the degree programs that partners with us, their faculty member nominates them. With regard to arriving to the scheduled location, I think that is a personal decision. Some people, like to, be prepared and be there. But and that's going to depend on the ease of travel and how far you're going. If you're getting on a plane to travel to take the exam, then yeah, I'd want to land at least the day before to make sure that you get there and can get settled wherever you're staying and be ready to take the exam on your assigned day. But that I wouldn't be able to tell you definitively. If you're not flying, same day, but I'm a nervous traveler. I'm the woman that's at the airport hours in advance. So I would probably be, if I had to fly somewhere to take an exam, I'd be there definitely the day before.
If I want to take the FRM exam, what would be your main advices in order to study? Yes, perhaps some key points that we should remember in order to be successful in the exam.
Well, here's a little hack for you. The learning objectives, 2023 FRM learning objectives, they're free. They're on our website. Download them. We tell you what we want you to know in every single chapter. If you read something in the chapter and then you look at the learning objectives and you can't answer or address the learning objective, you better go back and look at it again. But we won't ask a question on the exam that is not linked to one of those learning objectives. So I'll just tell you guys a funny story. I don't even, when I worked on the FRM team, we used to reach out to working practitioners who have their FRM, to help write questions, in part because they're in industry, they're doing it. So I can ask a question, what is the Sharpe ratio, and have 4 options. But someone that works in industry will be able to put that in some sort of context. When would you use the Sharpe ratio? Things of that nature. So we rely on them, to help us with exam items. And then the development team, we're the people that make it a fair exam. So for anybody that's not so far out of school, okay, if you've ever sat down at an exam and looked at the question and went, when did the professor teach us this? They never taught us this. I did not. And I was here every single class period. I did not learn this. We tell you in advance what we want you to know. And if it's not in there, don't worry about it. My other hint is, if the learning objective says calculate, derive, anything like that, there is a formula involved, and you best know it because we don't provide formula sheets. And so there will be a calculation question, because those are, to be honest, those are easiest for our outside subject matter experts to write. You know, that's an easy test question to come up with a numerical answer. The other ones are much harder. But if it says analyze, interpret, compare, we're not asking you to calculate it, but you will need to understand what it is, what it means. And you won't need to worry so much about the formula. And the learning objectives are free. And now we include the FRM ebooks as part of the registration. We've only been doing that for the past couple of years. I think we started that in 2020, maybe. That when you register for the Part 1 exam, there's the program enrollment fee, which is a one-time fee. You don't pay that when you sit for Part 2. You pay it at the beginning. And the exam registration fee not just covers your exam, but will also provide you with an ebook of the FRM Part 1 books.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I always tell students that. I'm like, it's the learning objectives, because current FRMs are kind of mean. They write test questions, and I'm like, no, there's no learning objective. Out. And I did tell you guys, and I mean this quite sincerely, we used to time ourselves. Like, we would swap sections with each other. Like, if one of us worked on current issues and I also worked on financial markets, then I'd swap and do someone else's section and take their test. And we would time ourselves. And if someone had a really long calculation that took, 10 minutes to do, we're like, no, this isn't right. You have to be able to get a question done, pretty quickly. So we would figure out a way to write the question. So maybe we're starting lower in the calculation process, or maybe shortening the answer, so you only had to go so far, things like that. But we do work really hard to make it a fair exam. We do look at questions. We look at all questions after the exam. I mean, if everybody got, and I don't mean every single person on the planet, but if an overwhelming majority of people got a particular question wrong, and everybody picked the same wrong answer, like, we would go back and examine that question. Perhaps it wasn't written clearly, or it wasn't written as clearly as we hoped. So we do try really hard to make it a really fair exam. It's not an easy exam, but it's fair.
Excellent. Is there any remaining question from the audience? Please feel free to ask them.
Sure.
Well, so
come on, you guys are worse than my worst students.
Yeah.
I taught undergrads that ask more questions.
Well, so I think we're pretty much done.
Ooh.
I really thank you, Lisa, for this time. I think it has been a useful presentation, very useful for our students. As I told you, there's an increasing demand for FRM, for the FRM exam and the CFA exam. We have an internal regulation that asks professionals to have at least the first level of the CFA exam or the FRM exam if you want to dedicate to the investment or the risk management side. So that's why in Peru we have seen this. I really appreciate your time.
Of course. I will send you, if you'd like, Paul, I can send you a PDF of my slides. Like, I don't know if you could post them on your course website or something. And I've also, if you guys haven't seen, I dropped my email address in the chat box. You may absolutely feel free to email me if you have other questions. If you were a little shy and didn't want to ask me now, you can ask me tomorrow via email. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. And again, if you have any questions, really, I'm happy to help.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks to the audience. Thank you very much. And have a Merry Christmas, a very good New Year, and very happy holidays to everyone.
Have a very Merry Christmas all, and Happy New Year. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.